There we go.
All right. Way to hit your microphone right as you count it down.
Yeah, sorry about that. This is episode 18 of Ruminate. I am Rob Lewis, and with me as always is Mr. John Voorhees, all the way from Chicago. Hi, John.
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
I'm very, very well, John. How are you?
Good. We were just talking before we got started that both of us are finally recovering from our various colds and things, slowly but surely. Hopefully, in 2 weeks, we'll be even we won't be as stuffed up as we've been the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, with a bit of luck. I kind of got unlucky because I had the week off work, and then I got ill. I was like, of course, because when else would you want to be ill other than when you've got a week off?
Yeah.
But yeah, as you say, we're both kind of feeling better. So yeah.
Well, I'm going downtown today, Rob. I'm going to a Cubs baseball game. Actually going to go see sports ball.
I don't know how baseball works, John.
I know. Well, the way baseball works is you go, you have some beers, and you talk to people, and you mostly ignore the game. At least that's how I do it, because I'm not a big baseball fan.
Sure.
The Cubs are a good team this year. They have the distinction of having not won the World Series longer than any other team. Goes back, I think, I should probably fact check this on Google, but goes back a long time, early 1900s. But they have one of the oldest stadiums in the U.S., plopped down right in the middle of a neighborhood on the north side of Chicago. So it's a lot of fun to go to, and they just did a bunch of renovations. So it's kind of fun to go to those. It's in a neighborhood close to a neighborhood I used to live in when I lived in the city, and it's supposed to be good weather today. So I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. Sounds great. So I do know the Cubs because that's the team they mention in Back to the Future 2.
Ah, yes.
So I do know who they are. I didn't know that was baseball, but there we are. Good. I do now.
Well, I'll send you some pictures today, and you can find them on Telegram, which we'll talk about later.
Definitely. So we had a little bit of follow-up from last week because I kind of rambled through talking about the alt attribute on images on Twitter and stuff like that. And Frederick sent in some feedback about this, and basically I was completely wrong. What you actually want is what Twitter are doing, which is if there is no description, what you really want is an alt tag without a value, which is exactly what they're doing. Because this will indicate to the screen reader to not read it, but indicate that it shouldn't have a description. Otherwise, it will read the URL of the image, which is obviously a terrible idea.
Right. It basically lets the screen reader skip over that particular element, right?
Yeah, basically, it kind of tells it this is intentional. This doesn't have a description.
Right. Don't
try and read the URL or anything else.
Right.
Available. And he was kind enough actually to set up a demo page with 4 different examples. So one with no attribute, one with no value, which was the scenario we were talking about last week. One with an empty string, and then see one with a full descriptive string.
Yeah.
So we'll put that demo page in the show notes. So it was quite useful. I mean, it's the kind of thing I probably should have known, but it's just not something that's come up very often for me. But yeah, the demo page is pretty useful.
Yeah,
if you just want to kind of try out how a screen reader sees those different versions of images.
Right. No, that was definitely helpful. I mean, it's always nice to have a real world example like that. And thanks for sending that feedback, Frederick.
Definitely. So I think that's pretty much it for follow-up. We didn't get anything else this week. So I guess we can move on to the first topic, which is you've titled it perfectly, the Reddit fiasco.
Yeah, this was kind of a debacle. I mean, this happened this past Monday night U.S. time. I got home and there was a lot of activity in the Mac Stories Slack because it had surfaced on Reddit that third-party Reddit clients were disappearing, and it wasn't just one or two. It was a lot. I mean, it was Narwhal, Antenna. There were at least 2 or 3 others that just disappeared on Monday night, and no one knew exactly what was going on. And the immediate suspicions that started to surface was that Reddit had something to do with it, which turns out not to be true, because the Thursday before, Reddit had released their official client, and Reddit Reddit had the same feature in it that these other apps, it turns out, got pulled for.
Yeah, so this was really strange. What was kind of funnier to me was that I kind of saw this story, went to the App Store to see if just to verify it, and Narwhal had a huge update that wasn't actually related to the pulling. It was obviously an update that had just come through, and even just that was like, well, this is a good app. This is a good developer. They're obviously sticking to all the rules and stuff like that. But yeah, so they got pulled. Am I right in trying to understand this? This was because they all had a switch to turn on and off what Reddit calls not safe for work content. Is that right?
That's right. I mean, if you go to Reddit on the web, they have a setting on the web that does effectively the same thing. But all of these apps had that as well, including the Reddit app. They have a switch in the settings that lets you turn that on or off. I'm not sure whether it was on or off by default in each of these various apps, but they had the switch, and you can view that switch in one of two ways, I suppose. One is to view it as a way to block not safe for work content, and another one is to view it as enabling that, and I think that's what Apple was viewing it as, frankly.
Yeah, it's kind of, especially in the context of Reddit, it's kind of an interesting that way to phrase it, because although it's titled as not safe for work, which in general what does apply to things like porn and the kind of stuff that you genuinely don't want to look at work,
right?
But because Reddit as an app is kind of, as a website is kind of a little bit hacked together, a lot of the subreddits will use not safe for work flag for spoilers and stuff like that.
Oh, interesting.
So it has this kind of secondary effect that if Apple are saying, right, you can't show any of this not safe for work content, or however they want to do it, if you're in, a good example of this is like Star Wars. If you're in the Star Wars subreddit, they will use the not safe for work flag for any posts or images that include spoilers for like new films or trailers and things like that. I mean, the clients seem to be coming back onto the store now. I think I've seen Narwhal back there, maybe.
No, yeah, definitely. This was a very short-lived story because a lot of these apps were back the next morning. Yeah, what happened with Narwhal was, you're right, they had a big update coming out that had all sorts of other features, and they got stuck in review not because of what was coming out in the update, but because of the switch. And I suspect what probably happened is, with the Reddit app being approved just days before, someone within app review started taking a hard look at these not safe for work switches and decided, what, this is a problem across the board. And the problem, and you can argue whether that's a good idea. I mean, I think it's a bad policy, just because if a not safe for work switch isn't allowed, then I don't know how browsers are allowed. I mean, the reality is, they took out the switch. So do you know, Rob, what the default is on Reddit on the web, whether the not safe for work is turned on or off?
I can't remember on the web for definite, but I know that Narwhal, the app, definitely comes. So it's off by it's on by default. So you will see all content.
You'll see all. Okay.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely this kind of misconception that not safe for work only means porn. Right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I've seen on Reddit, see it all the time, where it will get flagged as not safe for work, and it will be, I don't know, a sign with a swear word on it.
Right.
Because I think it really depends where you work. Because some people work in offices where the line is nudity. But some people may not be able to look at things that have got swearing in or stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's generally why they come, with the not safe for work content as showing by default, because it's just kind of how Reddit works.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But, the thing that bugged me about this even more so than the policy change was the fact that these apps were just summarily pulled down from the store, as opposed to giving these, developers some time to change to accommodate it. Because, for instance, Narwhal, they had a big update coming out. That switch has been in Narwhal forever. I mean, some of these apps have had those switches for over a year. And nothing really changed between, say, Sunday night and Monday that changed that for end users. There wasn't anything particularly dangerous about this. It wasn't, threatening people's data, or it wasn't some sort of crashing bug. It was just a policy change by Apple itself that led to them taking these down. And, what I think they should have done personally is say, give them 30 days. Change this. It's a policy change. You might like it, you might not like it, but you either comply with it or we take down your app. But give people a reasonable amount of time to fix their app. Instead, they yanked all of them down, and people were left scrambling overnight to pull the switches out of their settings.
Yeah, and this policy, even in of itself, is just complete crap, because there is not safe for work content in every single app. Twitter and Tumblr are the two big examples I can think of. Like, it's not like this stuff exists or doesn't, in these certain apps. It pretty much exists in every app, assuming that you can connect to the internet.
Yeah.
Or you can connect with other people.
Well, that's why I think someone looked at the switch and decided this was like a turn porn on switch, as opposed to, someone. I think that, I don't know. I think it's it was a little too close to press this button to see porn in someone's mind. And that's just a guess, obviously, but it seems to me that that's probably what was going on. But, Apple did, I guess, to their credit, expedite reviews of these apps after they took out the switches. But, expedited review, I don't know. They should, the developers should have been given some time to get their ducks in a row and get this out. It doesn't have to be a long time, but they should have been given some, what if someone were away on vacation, say, for 2 weeks, and they couldn't get to it? Their app would be down for 2 weeks. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know you kind of said, to Apple's credit, they gave them expedited review. I would hope so, because, they pulled these people's revenue stream, presumably. Like, if this is the only thing they work on, and their app isn't in the store, even if it's only for a few hours, that's it's a significant dip in income.
Yeah, well, and the cynical view obviously is that the expedited review was more about this story not blowing up, because it was, the story was largely dead by the next morning, at least U.S. time, so it never really got legs. It got reported on a lot of sites, but by the next day it had mostly blown over.
Yeah, darling, because as you say, they'd kind of all appeared back in the store by that point. But, I just think this kind of policy change where, or these changes where Apple suddenly decide to pull apps, this really needs to stop happening, because this is like every week or two.
Yeah.
It seems like that every single week there's a story where a perfectly legitimate app is being pulled from the store or being rejected for some arbitrary reason, and the only way they get back in the store is by going to a news site, or it gets reported by a news site, and then somebody at Apple sees it and presumably goes down to the review department and tells them, stop being ridiculous, let this app back in. Right,
and I think it does a lot of damage within the developer community. This is the kind of stuff that really makes people skittish, and not innovate and not push the boundaries, because they're afraid that at any moment their app might be pulled without any kind of discussion or communication. It comes down to communication. It's a lack of communication by Apple about, especially here where it's not, it wasn't anything new or threatening to customers. It was just an internal interpretation of a rule that was different than the way they interpreted it, say, 6 months prior. I think there's got to be better communication. And the other thing I think is a shame here too is that I think there was immediate suspicion about Reddit itself, because they had the new app that just came out, and Apple didn't take down the Reddit app even though it had the switch, which is kind of interesting. So immediately people started speculating that Reddit might be to blame for the takedowns of third-party apps, which they weren't. But they found themselves kind of defending what they were doing as soon as these apps got taken down, when they had nothing to do with it at all.
Yeah, as you say, I think it just affects far too many people for Apple to not do something about it. They really just need to make sure everybody knows what they're doing and is on the same page. But it just seems like this happens far too much.
Yeah, yes, it happens far too much. And I know that's one thing I saw Federico tweet that night. He's like, I feel like I'm writing a story about this every week. And it's kind of true. I mean, it happens constantly. And this was just a particularly big one. And as I said, I don't think it got real legs, mainly because it was corrected so fast. And two, Reddit is a little bit, I think, outside the mainstream in terms of what people, I don't think it affects as many people as maybe we think it does. I mean, Reddit is big, but it tends to be a little geek centric, and I think it didn't, so it didn't get picked up, say, by major general news sites and that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. So, talking of the App Store, you've put the little table flip guy in the show notes. This is the story that Apple are considering paid search in the or promoted search in the App Store.
Yeah,
and I really don't like this.
Yeah, this is an article that originated in Bloomberg, and I think it was a more general article that there's a secret team of 100 people working on changing the App Store, and one of the things that was reported as being considered is paid search, which I think is done on the Google Play Store. And I guess on one level, first of all, I think that this is probably not worth getting upset about yet, because this is one of those things where it's reported that a source says that someone's thinking about maybe doing something. And, I think if you're going to revamp the App Store, you really should consider everything, including probably this. I would discard this idea very quickly, but it's worth thinking about. It just strikes me as there are so many problems with search and discoverability on the App Store that putting in paid advertisements into that stream is not a particularly good way to help customers find what they're looking for. I mean, you'll end up with, at least in my mind, it feels like what we'll end up with is something like a Google search results page where you'll have to scroll down past the 2 sponsored links at the top before you get to your search results. And if we have that on the App Store and then the search results below that are just as bad as they ever were, that's not going to help anything. And this is going to, if this were implemented, I think it would be very damaging for small developers, because they're just not going to be able to afford sponsored links.
No, definitely. I think what we'll end up seeing in these sponsored slots is kind of the same thing that you see on the Facebook ads and sometimes Twitter as well. It'll be the Clash of Clans and the Candy Crushes that will spend money because, they can afford to spend the money to, even if it's only a few users, because they're, the return on each user they get is so high. They already spend so much on advertising. This wouldn't be a problem, but as you say, I think smaller developers it's just not going to help them at all.
Yeah, no, I agree completely with that. So I'm just going to keep an eye on this. I'm not going to get upset about it. If it actually came to pass, I would be very upset about it, but I'll believe it when I see it. So,
yeah, I think you've got the right attitude there, because as you say, it's kind of more of a rumor and a source of a friend, and it's kind of a little bit out there, but I think it's just worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, to me, really, the bigger story is that there's a lot of smoke around changes coming to the App Store. I mean, there's been a lot of articles appearing here and there and whispers and so forth that make it seem as though this is actually happening, and I think that's a good thing. So take the optimistic approach and hope that Apple is rethinking the store, and that when they do make changes, that they don't make changes like this, but they make changes that actually benefit users.
Sure.
So, Rob, we should talk about messaging and what's wrong with messaging, because we've both been kind of messing around with different things, including Telegram recently.
Yeah, you told me, I guess it was maybe the beginning of the week or maybe last week, about so Mac Stories have their own channel on Telegram now.
Yep.
And you kind of sent me a link, and you were like, "Get on Telegram. This is where all the cool people are." So I did already have it downloaded because I've got a couple of people on there, but I joined the channel and yeah, I think we've both kind of been thinking about this for a while. But you look at something like Telegram when you compare it to iMessage, and Telegram is just kind of worlds ahead in terms of features that it's got.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, I think probably one of the main things that's holding iMessage back is the compatibility with SMS. Because you think about it, SMS can handle media, but not in the same way some of these other apps can. And I think if probably one of the things that holds iMessage back is that if it were to implement some of these more advanced features, you'd have a difference between messages you get from people who are not on iMessage and those that are, where you'd have very simple messages coming over SMS, and then you'd have, this more rich media heavy feed coming from other people. And I think it might confuse some people.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, I guess we should talk a little bit about what Telegram does so that people kind of understand it. My understanding is it's a little bit like WhatsApp. I've not used WhatsApp. Have you?
No, I have seen it. Somebody actually, just before we started recording, David described to me on Telegram that WhatsApp is kind of, or Telegram is kind of like a cleaner, nicer looking version of WhatsApp.
Okay.
They kind of function the same. WhatsApp's UI is a little bit strange on iOS, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, they're pretty much the same.
Yeah. So with Telegram, you've got, for instance, if you post a link, you'll get a little preview at the bottom. So you get a little preview of what the link looks like. If you they have stickers. Let's see what else you can do. Audio clips that you can post. All sorts of things that really aren't available in iMessage. It's got, obviously got video and photos and that sort of thing. But we started at Mac Stories. I started fiddling around with Telegram back towards the end of February with Federico, because we were thinking about it in terms of, is this something good for the club? Is this something that would be good for the site in general? And we've just kind of messed around with it for a couple of months before he set up the channel, the Mac Stories Lounge channel. I think it was just over a week ago. It was about 8 days ago. I think it was like on a Friday night. And he and I and Graham just started posting a few things. If you go all the way back to the beginning of it, just to kind of drop a little content in there for when he opened it up. And then with just a tweet on a Saturday afternoon, it started, and it's grown pretty quickly since then. And it's been a lot of fun. I mean, for us, it's like a nice informal outlet and behind the scenes type thing for people who want that kind of thing, without clogging up Twitter with a lot of this sort of thing. And to just have a little fun with it. We didn't use Twitter because, you've got fewer multimedia options on Twitter. And with the 140 character limit, it's kind of, it's too limiting. And we wanted to be able to do this easily and quickly and get it out without too much trouble. And this has been working really well for us.
Yeah, I mean, I subscribed, as I say, when you sent me the message and told me to. And yeah, I think you're right. Like, it's the amount of options you've got there to post different types of media, and you get inline previews, and I mean, they have stickers as well, which, again, I think when we hit a feature like that, and I'm like, well, yeah, all the messaging apps have that except iMessage. Facebook Messenger has that, WhatsApp, I'm sure there's a few others I'm not thinking of, but pretty much all the messaging apps have all these features now.
Right.
And iMessage really just doesn't.
Right. And things like stickers seem a little trivial, but they actually are kind of fun. It's just like emoji on steroids, I think. It looks pretty good. And they're fun to use. One thing that's also kind of nice for us is that we didn't want to be managing a community and dealing with, what all that involves. So this is really just, it's a publication channel. It's just in little small snippets, which makes it something that doesn't take a lot of extra time in order to participate in, which is kind of nice too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's, as you say, even from a subscriber's point of view, it is kind of nice to almost not be able to reply. I'm just kind of looking at things and I'm just consuming it, and that's done. Whereas I think, kind of on Twitter, if I've got something to say, I maybe don't necessarily think about it straight away. I just send it. So it's kind of nice to just have this. Here's a thing. Just look at it, enjoy it, and move on. Like that, there isn't kind of any extra interaction there needed from me or from you guys on the other end.
Right. Yeah. No, we've had some people who wanted to be able to provide feedback, and it is a little weird sometimes posting things but not really having any kind of feedback loop. But we've just pointed people to Twitter, and that's worked pretty well, because if someone really feels strongly enough that they need to provide us some feedback on something we post, it's easy enough for them to tweet at the Mac Stories Net account, or me, or Federico, or Graham. So that's actually worked out pretty well, and I've gotten a little bit of feedback here and there. The thing though, so it's good for that, and that's a channel. And I guess, this is the other thing that's different from iMessage, is that something like Telegram, it's not just messaging between either individuals or groups of people. You also have channels, and this, the Mac Stories thing is a channel, which is really just one directional. We post things and people can subscribe and they can look at them. It works a lot like a mini Twitter. There are also bots, which are pretty cool, because with bots, for instance, you can subscribe. There are bots that are pretty much just RSS feeds, and you'll get a notification if a site has a bot. You'll get a notification, and if it's a link, you'll have a little preview of the article, much more so than you would get on Twitter. And there are other bots that do all sorts of things. You can, search Giphy or YouTube, or find stickers, or search Wikipedia. There's just a bunch of them. There's a Spotify one. Pretty neat.
Yeah, it really is interesting. And I don't know. Maybe at WWDC this year we'll see some improvements to iMessage, but I'm not massively hopeful. And I think, to be honest, a lot of people just kind of use whatever messaging app other people are using. So, people will just jump around between different messaging apps anyway.
No, that's true. That is the one downside of Telegram. I only have a handful of people who are using it who I know. You're on it, and Federico, and a few other people that I know. But for the most part, my in real life friends and family around here are not on Telegram. They've never heard of it. So now I've got, like 3 messaging apps at the bottom of my screen. I've got this, iMessage, and Twitter, basically, for my 3 main communication tools.
Yeah, definitely. So, hopefully they'll add some improvements, but it's nice to just see what's available on these other messaging apps. Because I kind of mentioned to you, and I've said a couple of times that I'm seriously considering Android at some point. So I'm kind of looking at what the alternatives are to iMessage and things like that.
Yeah, that's one nice thing about Telegram, is it's on all sorts of platforms too. It's on Mac and iOS and Android. It's even on Windows Phone.
Oh wow! Even on Windows Phone.
It is. Because I've been looking at what all the things it does, and you can get at it just about from anywhere, which is pretty nice. I wonder with iMessage whether you could somehow split up the UI and create some sort of distinction between better than just green versus blue messages for SMS versus iMessages, and then have more rich interactions with something like with the iMessage ones.
Yeah, that would be quite nice, but who knows? We shall see.
Yeah. All right. So, what else do you want to talk about? You want to talk about TextExpander and how that we're full of all sorts of kind of fiasco type stories this week, I think. Yeah,
well, I just want to mention this. I don't want to, they've backtracked and they've kind of changed it, but I don't want to kick them while they're down. But TextExpander released kind of a new update, and it was a subscription based app in the end. So it ended up being, I think it was like $5 a month or something like that. And I think a lot of people, including myself, kind of saw that and thought, is it worth $5 a month to me? Like, I like the app, but I couldn't really justify kind of $50-$60 a year or whatever that would work out at. And then I guess a few days ago, I guess it was, they've made some adjustments and changed it to be, I think it's $20 a year now.
Right.
So, I think that's good. They've kind of listened and made some changes, but I said to you before we started recording, I've already switched to a different app, because I was kind of, I was already thinking about upgrading TextExpander because I was on an old version. And then this kind of happened, and I was just like, oh, I'm just going to switch somewhere else and be done with it. Because I don't really use a lot of the advanced features that TextExpander has. But I'd certainly consider it at $20 a year. That's a lot more reasonable to my mind than $5 a month.
Right. Yeah. No, it struck me that what happened here in part was, I mean, obviously it's hard to make a living on software these days, and they looked at a subscription model, and Smile must have a decent number of companies using TextExpander internally. So they kind of hit on this idea of a subscription model that centralized your snippets online so that you could sync them as well as share them with other people. And I don't know what happened, but when they updated, they didn't really, those were the two main things that were added. They were the syncing, and which the old TextExpander already had via either iCloud or Dropbox. And they also added the ability to share snippets with other people, which I think makes some sense in an enterprise situation, but I don't think that is something that there's a lot of need for individuals. I mean, I've never felt the need to share a snippet with anybody else. And so when they switched not just to a subscription model for companies, but also for individuals, I think people looked at it, felt like they were having the simple sync solution of Dropbox and iCloud taken away, and just swapped out for something, proprietary to Smile, and adding virtually no real features that appealed to an individual. And as a package, that combined with the price that was being charged was unattractive to a lot of people. And there was a lot of nerd rage, as you always get when something like this happens. But they have rethought it, and I think they did the right thing by going to a model for existing users that's $20 a year. So if you're a current customer of TextExpander, you can get that deal, and it's a lifetime deal, which makes it, I think, work a lot better for individuals. But I think a lot of damage was done in the meantime. There was, I don't know, was it like 5 or 6 days between when this came out and when they introduced this other plan? And I give them credit for doing it, and I feel bad that they took it on the chin with a lot of customers as a result of it. But I think it's tricky a lot of times trying to navigate between enterprise solutions and individual software customers, and they're very different markets, and I think this kind of just proves that out a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this kind of goes back. We spoke a couple of episodes back about subscriptions and kind of hitting a peak. I think we were kind of talking about memberships or websites and things like that, but I think this kind of falls in that same category that if everything I use suddenly becomes a subscription, I really can't afford to use everything that I use, and maybe that's a good thing, and I can kind of look at what I do and don't use. But I think maybe not every company can be a subscription-based software. Like, maybe there are some companies that just need to work better as a kind of single purchase, or even if it's a yearly price.
Yeah, I think models like this are very hard for utility apps. Just the way utility apps work. I think the paid upfront model works the best. It's also not one of the most attractive in a lot of ways for developers, but I think that's what people expect and works best with customers. There's an interesting discussion on Under the Radar this week, which is that touches on some of these issues, because David Smith just released Activity++ about a week ago or so. Really nice app. And after having talked, I think, on an episode prior to that about, would he do an ad-based model or would he do something else, he ultimately ended up charging just an upfront $3. And he talks a lot about why he did that. And I think it plays into this sort of thing a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I'm kind of glad that it's that they've rethought it. I think to some extent, I think maybe they just they maybe overvalued their app a little bit, compared to the expectations of their customers. $60 a year was maybe too much for something that I think probably a lot of people are maybe like me and you, where we don't use a lot of the advanced features, so that kind of high-ish price tag per year was probably not worth it.
Right.
But, as you say, the balance can be hard, especially if you're going after kind of the enterprise software. But yeah, good for them. I hope the TextExpander stays around for a while. Although I've switched to Type It For Me for now. It's always nice to have options, and maybe I'll have another look at it in 6 months or 12 months or something, and see where they're at.
Yeah, no, I'm going to stick with TextExpander just because it's what I know, and I hadn't switched to anything else. So I'm going to keep using it. Although right now I don't think it's on my laptop. I need to reinstall it. I did kind of rage uninstall it at one point. So
anyway, so let's get on to something more cheery, because we've been a bit moany today. We've only got a few kind of moany topics, but yep. I guess that's what happens when you like something, you can moan about it a little bit more. But,
yes.
So when I was waiting for you to get onto Skype, I tweeted out if anyone had any questions, and I said, right, you've got 5 minutes. If anyone gets a question in, we'll answer it. And David sent us a question and said, what do you do to first contact somebody? Do you send one-line emails? If I was going to send an email, yes, I'd probably make it as short as possible. There's a good episode of Hello Internet. I think it's maybe 5 or 6. We'll find it for the show notes, where CGP Grey talks about kind of the perfect email. It really should just kind of be as short as possible. The first paragraph, just explain what you need to do, or what it is you need from the person, and then if you want to kind of go into a story or backstory or whatever, do that after. But I mean, to answer David's question, I mean, in general, I guess I would probably go to Twitter for the most part. If it was just kind of a quick question I had, or I might just say, what's the best way to contact you, and people will come back with an email, or maybe a messaging app or something like that. What about you, John?
Yeah, I guess it really depends on who I'm contacting. I do use Twitter a fair amount. DMs are a good way. I mean, I stay in touch with a lot of developers. When I'm looking at software for Mac stories, DMs are one way that I talk with developers. Although at some point, a lot of times I just move it, suggest moving it to email, because the problem with DMs is they get kind of buried, and the thread, you end up with these threads that are a little hard to deal with. I don't like email a lot, but it is nice to have it there as a reference, especially when people are sending you links and other things. I kind of prefer to have it all in one place. So that's kind of a good way. Sometimes it's hard to find people's email addresses though. So I do use probably Twitter the most and email second. I guess that's what I do. Yeah.
I think you've kind of hit a good point there, though, John. You say people's emails are hard to find. I think maybe that's probably by design for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is.
They'll deliberately hide those so that you can't get at them. But
no, it's true. I mean, I prefer. It depends on what. Like I said, it depends on what I'm contacting people for. If I'm trying to do a review of something, I'd rather not do a public at reply if I don't have to, but I will. But that's just like work type stuff. Max story.
Yeah, sure.
If I'm chatting with you, I'll take it to Slack first, probably. Sometimes I message, right?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe, or iMessage or Telegram now, I suppose. Unless you've got your notifications turned off for me, which you probably do.
I don't. You still have notification privileges right now, John.
Okay, good. So a lot of friends and people I deal with, and family and that sort of thing. It's mostly iMessage, I'd say. And if there's a Slack involved, it's Slack. Like, I never send emails to any of the Mac Stories guys, really. That's entirely Slack, and sometimes there'll be the only emails that are ever involved are, for instance, if somebody contacts someone else and they think this is something you should look at, John, not me, and they'll forward the email to me. But other than that, we never use email to communicate, and you and I don't either, right?
Oh no, definitely not. Other than the terrible emails that we get from Dropbox Paper when one of us edits the document.
Oh yeah, there is that, and then every now and then I'll send you the Simplecast, my share of the Simplecast cost, and that's one of those PayPal emails.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so that was the only question we got. But thank you, David. Anyway, go for it, John. You've put this link in here. I'm not sure what it is you wanted to say about this.
Oh,
this
nothing. This is just a photo of Rob and I think Jess, right? Is she in the picture too? I gotta look.
Yeah, that's Jess, my girlfriend. Yeah,
yeah. At the zoo, in one of those things where you look, they have the cutout face, and it's the two of you with a bunch of meerkats, and I thought it was funny.
The really fun part about this photo, so it was just the two of us that went to the zoo. And because we went on a Tuesday, it was quite quiet. And this photo is actually two photos that I photoshopped together because there was nobody around to take the photo for us.
Yeah, you did a good job. Where did you split it?
Well, I actually cut out one of the heads. I kind of lined it up and made sure the angle was right, and then just cut out the head part and put it on top of the other image.
Oh, I'm impressed. That's a good job.
So but it was it was quite quiet. There wasn't really anybody around to ask to take the photo at this particular point. So I just said, "Oh, I'll tell you what, let's take two photos, and I'll deal with it when we'll deal with it in post."
That's good.
So the zoo was fun.
Yeah, that's a good time to go in the middle of the week like that. I'm sure it was pretty quiet.
Oh yeah, I mean it was great. I think there was a few old couples, and there was, I think, maybe one bus full of kids, like school kids. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, we barely even saw anybody the whole day. We were there kind of maybe 4 hours.
Yeah, I liked your penguin picture. I saw that kind of penguin when I was in South America, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, we got really lucky, actually. I guess maybe because it was quiet, but in the penguin kind of enclosure, I guess. All the penguins are just kind of hanging around really close to the edge where you can actually stand.
Okay.
So we were able to get some really nice pictures.
Oh, that's cool. I went to an island in Chile that had where a lot of the penguins breeded. They're Magellan penguins, and they were and they smell awful when they're there in the tens of thousands. They smell pretty bad.
So right, I think that's probably it for this week, I think.
I think so.
We've covered lots of different things, including meerkats and penguins, so people probably weren't expecting that, but there you go. Yeah,
I think this week we got to tell people where to find us and tell them where to find us on Telegram.
Exactly. Let's do it. You can find... How does Telegram work, John? Do I have a username?
You need a link. Telegram.me, and for me, it would be telegram.me / Mac Stories. Telegram/me/ Mac Stories. That's the best place to find me. That's generally where I hang out.
We're totally nailing this, John. This is really good. And I think I have the same username, so it'd be telegram.me / rmlewisuk.
Yeah, so that's that. And then there's always Twitter, at John Voorhees, which is JohnVoorHees. And then writing over at Mac Stories and making apps over at Squibner.com.
And and I'm on Twitter, same username, rmlewisuk. If you follow me on Twitter, that's normally where I post everything. So I think that's it for this week.
Sounds good.
Cool. See you later, John.
Okay, bye-bye.